morning, Bunny. All right. See you next time. It is starting to get cold in the mornings. I think it's like 50 degrees right now, so I'm cold. Somebody said on my video from last week that they were trying to look around me to get a view of the barn, and so I figured this week I'd give you a better view of the barn. First off, same disclaimer from last week. This video is not intended as a request for critiques on my diet. I'm just sharing what works for me. I love it when people share what works for them. We're all very, very different. So in the comments, please refrain from any dietary critiques, either of myself or others. And I do have to say that I was so impressed last week on my first Wellness Wednesday back. I didn't have to delete or ban anybody, delete any comments or ban anybody. Everyone was so respectful and the comments were so incredibly kind. It made me feel very happy, and I just appreciate that so much. So in this Wellness Wednesday video, I wanted to chat a little bit about how I am different when I eat the diet that I know works the best for my body. I don't like living with labels necessarily of like what diet I am, what I am. I don't take identity from the diet that I eat, but just for clarity's sake, I think the best term right now to describe my diet is Ketovore. All these different names are just kind of hilarious, but I think the Ketovore name was made popular probably by Berry, who is amazing and who you should go follow. Her husband is Ken Berry, and he's a huge low-carb advocate, and they're just an amazing couple, and they're both definitely worth following. But the way I kind of see what Ketovore is that it's a higher protein keto, and not just higher protein, but higher animal food protein keto. Another name you could use is animal-based keto. I've also heard a great name, which is Keto AF, standing for keto animal foods. So those are all names that I think I could use to describe the way that I eat. And just real quick, the way that that looks for me is that every meal that I eat is based around an animal protein. I don't worry about getting too much protein. My body regulates pretty well with hunger, the amount of protein I need. So I just kind of follow my hunger and then add in enough fat and enough carbs that I feel satisfied. So that just is, you know, the fat that comes with the meat, whatever meat I'm eating, or adding avocados, or if I want to do any kind of dips or dressings, it's just some fat comes along with whatever I eat when I dress it up the way I like. And then any carbs I get come from veggies, and I don't eat a lot of veggies. I used to have the idea that is very prominent that the more vegetables you eat, the healthier you'll be and the better it will be for you. And while that's definitely could be true for some people, it is not true for me. And that was one of the things I kind of had to recognize for myself instead of listening to the experts. I had to recognize that when I ate lots of vegetables and certain kinds of vegetables, I actually didn't feel better, and it actually made me feel a lot worse. And it wasn't until I cut them all out that I realized that. And I was like, oh my gosh, vegetables, not all vegetables are healthy, and it's not, you know, the more the better. That goes against everything I have ever, you know, believed or been taught. So now basically the vegetables that I eat are just whatever I want to make my meal more exciting. I'll have sliced up avocados. I love different kinds of pickled peppers like jalapenos and banana peppers. They add lots and lots of flavor and crunch to a meal. Lacto-fermented vegetables I love, like sauerkraut or like my lacto-fermented green beans. I also want to make some pickles this year, the lacto-fermented kind. Those are really good for digestion, and I find that I do better when I eat the lacto-fermented or cooked vegetables than when I eat fresh. If I sit down and eat a big salad, I don't feel well in the evening. I'll still do it sometimes because I love salad, but I know that it's gonna affect me digestively, so I don't do it very often. I put up a what I eat in a day video the other day, so you can go check that out if you're curious about what that looks like, you know, on a plate. And I got a great response from that video. A lot of people said they really liked it and would like to see more, so definitely planning on doing more of those types of videos, so you can look forward to that. So if I had to pick a label for my diet, that's what I would pick, is Ketovore. And that to me is just a higher protein, animal-based keto. So like I said last week, I am not focused on weight loss. And so in my videos, you're not going to hear me report lots of different numbers. I have stopped weighing myself. And it wasn't because I had to force myself to stop weighing myself. Some people do that, and I've been there before, so I totally understand where you get kind of addicted to stepping on the scale every morning and that number really affects you. But for me, I've gone so far past being interested in it that I just don't want to weigh. It's so uninteresting for me to step on the scale every day. And that's partly because I'm not losing weight. If I were losing weight, it would be interesting, I'm sure. But like I said last week, my weight does what it wants to do in spite of my best efforts. So it's really not that interesting. Before it was like, oh, I'll step on the scale and then do something to affect what the scale says. But I don't feel that way anymore. I kind of let my body, be in the driver's seat, and I just do what I'm gonna do, and somehow it all works out. But because of that, I just am not interested in what the scale says. It's super, super boring. So you're not gonna hear me coming on sharing, my weight loss for the day or for the week or whatever. But what I do wanna share about, and what I try to focus on myself, is how I feel. And so I thought I'd share a little bit about the improvements that I feel when I stick to the diet that I know is best for my body. Last week I talked about dreams, and like when I go off and eat particularly grains and starches, I have nightmares. And I think that is a sign of like an underlying anxiety. Also, all of my life I've struggled with social anxiety. And when I eat my Ketovore diet, my anxiety improves so much. I feel like almost a different person. And I think the anxiety that I have is a symptom of inflammation, and particularly brain inflammation. And when I eat a diet that is less inflammatory, it's like my brain calms down. So I don't have anxiety dreams. I'm not as socially anxious around people. And I'm just overall a happier person. For me, the big lie of sugar and treats is that those things will make you happy. And you think, if I eat that, I'm gonna be happy, like my body will feel good and I'll be happy. And for me, it's actually the exact opposite. I eat those things and sure, it makes me happy in the moment when I taste it, just the first few bites that are so good. But in the long run, it actually makes me less happy, which is so crazy. So keeping that perspective has been really good for me because, back when I used to do diets and I was really feeling deprived, it was like I felt like I was being deprived from something that was going to make me feel good. But when I changed my perspective to knowing how good I feel when I eat the diet that's right for me, I actually can stay aligned with my desire to feel good by eating the things that in the long run make me feel good. It's kind of like before trying to lose weight, it was like, I am going to stop doing this thing that makes me feel good in order to get this result. But now the way I eat is all in alignment with that wanting to feel good desire. For me, I could not maintain something that I felt like didn't make me feel good for some other result long term. I'm always going to go back to what makes me feel good. I just had to readjust my thinking around what makes me feel good. So like I said earlier in the video, I feel like when I eat the diet that's right for me, that I am a different person, and there's a lot of ways that I feel like a different person, but one is in regard to appetite. I used to think that I was just the type of person that had a big appetite or had trouble, stopping when something tasted good, that thought about food all the time. Like I just identified as that type of person. And I would look at other people, like my husband, for example, who doesn't give a lot of thought to food, who can easily, put things down, especially like desserts and stuff. He can eat a few bites and then be like, oh, I'm done. And I thought, well, I'm just not that kind of person. But the change in my appetite and my thinking around food is so vast when I am adjusted to eating the lower carb and higher protein. It's like all of a sudden I found out what it was like to be that kind of person that is not hungry all the time, that can listen to full signals and stop, that doesn't have to, grab a bite of whatever just because it's there. I don't have things calling my name anymore. You guys that struggle with that kind of thing, you know what I'm talking about. So that right there is the hugest motivation for me to stick to what I know works. Because as soon as I add back sugar and carbs, I am not that person anymore. So quickly I can go back to being the person that's always thinking about food, that never feels full, that never feels satisfied. It's always looking for something else. Like, I can be that person within a day, but that is not the person that I want to be. When I am eating the diet that is right for me and my body is adjusted, oftentimes if I've been eating lots of carbs or whatever, it takes a couple of days to really get back into it. But it's like this switch gets flipped and my brain just quiets down about food, and it is the most glorious feeling. I used to think that cravings plus hunger were what hunger felt like, but I have learned that there is such a thing as hunger without cravings, and it feels so different. Like the anxiety that comes with the cravings, like I have to have that, I need that, or I need something. It's like that just goes away and you can just feel the physical feeling of hunger and you're like, oh, it's just hunger. So when I hear other people talk about food that don't struggle with, overeating or whatever, I realize that the kind of hunger they're talking about is this like super simple, like just hunger. And it's completely different than what I used to experience as hunger, that I would now consider hunger plus cravings. And I will say that I did not experience this change in my hunger and the removal of cravings until I went, or at least not fully, until I went to this higher protein keto. When I ate lower protein keto, definitely did not feel this way. I was so hungry. When I ate the Trim Healthy Mama diet, where you eat a low carb meal or a low fat, higher carb meal, definitely did not feel this. Every time I would eat what they call an E meal, which is the higher carb, lower fat meal, I was starving and I was like waiting, counting the hours to my next meal. And when I was eating like a low carb diet that had lots of baked goods and nuts and things like that, I did not feel the same way. And I think part of the reason for that is because when I was eating all kinds of other keto foods, I was probably eating less protein. So it's probably a combination of those foods aren't great for my hunger, but also higher protein is better for keeping my hunger under control. So the combination of having less protein and then more of those other things like nuts, it was just a bad combination for my hunger signals. And it didn't translate to the type of appetite control that I feel like I have now. So I have rambled for quite some time now, and I hope some of that made sense to you guys. I think those of you that have struggled with what I'm talking about will understand. And I really hope that those of you guys that are still struggling with that appetite, I would call it appetite control, that you do feel like there is hope. Because I just thought I was that kind of person. And it turns out that I'm not. It turns out that those foods were really impacting me, my brain, my appetite. And yes, I suppose I could say I am the kind of person that those foods affect that way. And maybe I always will be, and that's fine. But now I feel like I have the control, that I can control my diet and I can turn on or turn off that appetite switch by the food choices that I make, and not feeling like I'm a victim to just the way I am is incredibly freeing and exciting. And after I experienced that, there's no going back. Thanks for listening to me ramble. I hope you guys are all doing well, and I will see you again in another video.